This is one of the saddest stories that I have had to share with you in a long time. And it's not getting a lot of media attention. I want you to help me push this video across the country, because what happened to this man should not happen to anybody. This is really, really sad. I'm going to share with you the story, the murder of Kenneth Herring. Stay with me. Hello, I am attorney Augustus Corbett, one half of the Defiant Lawyers. Each and every week, we bring you a legal analysis of some story trending regarding politics, policies, personalities, or pop culture to empower you with the information you need to defy an unjust legal system and to nullify systemic racism. If that interests you, and it should, in the day that we live in, it should, please subscribe, like, share, comment, and click the bell. Let me go back to the fact that we come on YouTube. We developed this channel because we want to empower you to nullify systemic racism. We don't just say that. And the story that we're going to share with you today really brings that home. This is a really, really sad story. I had to kind of just sit here and get my head together, get my emotions together before I brought you this story. I had to sit here and say a prayer. So let's get into it. This story concerns these two people, Hannah Payne and Kenneth Herring. Hannah Payne and Kenneth Herring. Hannah Payne murdered Kenneth Herring. She murdered him. She was found guilty of murder of this man. When this incident occurred in 2019, Hannah was 21 years old, and Mr. Herring was in his 60s, where I am right now. It's another reason why I relate to this story. This man should have been enjoying his golden years, should have been enjoying his family. Instead, he ran into this woman. And in fact, you could say she ran into him and she took his life over nothing. You know, our lives just don't matter a lot in this country. And it's the reason why we came up with the slogan, Black Lives Matter. We came up with that slogan after George Zimmerman took the life of Trayvon Martin. In fact, this story is very similar to the George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin debacle. You're going to see what I'm talking about. This story also reminds me of another story that occurred in Georgia, the brutal murder of Ahmaud Arbery, where three white men took it upon themselves to do law enforcement and ended up murdering an innocent, unarmed, young black man in that case. Mr. Herring is an older black man. So whether old or young or in between, our lives just simply don't matter in this country. And that's why we got to continue to assert Black Lives Matter. So what happened in this story? Let's get into it. On May 7th, 2019, Hannah Payne observed what police described as a minor fender bender. After making a 911 call, she recklessly chased the unarmed driver identified as 62-year-old Kenneth Herring for about a mile. Upon catching him, she maneuvered her vehicle to impede his route. So she pulled right in front of him, forced him to stop. According to eyewitnesses, she aggressively stepped out of her car, her Jeep, in fact, with a 9mm. And she began cursing and screaming and punching and demanding Mr. Herring exit his vehicle. So let's just stop there and understand what we just read. This 21-year-old white woman, you could say white girl at that time, did all of this to an older black man because of a fender bender. With George Floyd, it was all over a fake $20 bill. All of that happened to Mr. Floyd because he allegedly tried to pass a fake $20 bill. Well, all this happened because Mr. Herring was apparently involved in an accident because of a medical emergency, paramedics and the police said. And because he was having a diabetic emergency, he was trying to get to the hospital, is what the prosecutor and his family members said. And so he left this accident, this, again, fender bender, to get to some help. And what did Hannah Payne do? She took the law in her own hands. And she was determined to go and get Mr. Herring. Let's go back to the story. I want you to see what happened next. So she cornered his vehicle. She maneuvered in front of him and forced him to stop like she was the sheriff or the police or something. And she wasn't. She jumped out of her car with a 9mm handgun and she began cursing him and screaming and punching and demanding Mr. Herring exit his vehicle. She called him MF, witnesses said. She then tells him she'll shoot him. She draws her gun, racks it, and shoots him. This is what the state proved happened. The 911 dispatcher that she was talking with told her not to chase Mr. Herring at least twice, repeatedly, some folks said. Does this remind you of anything? Doesn't this remind you of George Zimmerman, who was neither law enforcement or anything like that, yet he took it upon himself to chase down Trayvon Martin and took his young life. Took his young life. And this woman, this Hannah Payne, she decided to take it upon herself to try to stop Mr. Herring, who was having a medical emergency. And this was, again, all over a fender bender. Something that insurance would take care of. Small damages, just a little bit of money. Yet, she felt privileged. She felt entitled. She felt like she had to take the law in her own hands. The state presented evidence again that his erratic driving, which caused the fender bender, and the initial crash were a result, again, of diabetes. He was trying to get to the hospital. And she, again, cornered his vehicle, folks, cursing him out. You're going to hear some witnesses in just a moment describe what they saw and heard, because there were folks who saw all of this. You're going to hear from them in just a moment how she treated this man, this older man, old enough to have been her grandfather. She had no respect for him. She had no respect for Black life. And that's often the issue here in America. There's very little respect for Black life. Our lives just don't mean as much as other people's lives. And let me go ahead and say that because we live in a country that has shown us over 400 years that Black life don't matter. Unfortunately, Black life doesn't even matter sometimes amongst ourselves, but that's learned behavior. We learned it from them because all we've ever seen in this country was the cheapening, the worthlessness, the otherness of Black life. And so we begin to internalize it. We begin to embrace it subconsciously. And so we find it very easy to take other Black people's lives, Black on Black crime, Black on Black homicide. Homicide is the leading cause of death in the Black community. It would be remiss of me as an attorney and as a minister not to mention the fact that Black lives don't matter a whole lot, even amongst ourselves oftentimes. But again, it's learned behavior. We've been taught to devalue Black life. We've been taught to devalue our own lives. But right now we're talking about this 21-year-old woman who couldn't find it in her heart to deal with Mr. Herring the way she would want her grandfather dealt with, or her father. No, she got out cussing and screaming and calling him MFs before she shot him to death. I'm not making any of this up. I have looked at the evidence. I've watched some of the trial, and it's horrendous. So, for all of that, she was charged with malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, another felony murder, false imprisonment, possession while committing a felony, possession of a firearm, by the way, while committing a felony, and possession of a firearm while committing a felony. So she faced I got 7 here, but these are 8 different charges. Malice murder, very quickly, I'm not a Georgia attorney, I'm a Texas attorney, so I don't know the ins and outs of what these mean, but generally, they kind of mean the same from one state to another. Malice murder is when you take someone's life unlawfully with malice. I mean, there is something just ugly and depraved in your heart when you took this person's life. Just a disregard for somebody, sort of a hatred, if you will, a malice, a maliciousness. So she was charged and convicted of malice murder. Felony murder. Felony murder is when someone takes a person's life while committing a felony. They weren't intending to murder anyone when they committed the felony, but a person died as a result of the felony. So they are charged with felony murder. And you notice there are 2 counts of felony murder. And that is because she was convicted also of false imprisonment, which is a felony. So because Mr. Herring died as a result of her committing false imprisonment, that's felony murder. And because she had this possession of a firearm while committing a felony, that too is a felony. So she was charged again with felony murder because Mr. Herring died while she was committing that felony. And then there's aggravated assault, again, false imprisonment, and 3 counts of possession while committing a felony. She was convicted on every one of these charges. Every one. Now, there's a little bright side here. And I think these folks need to understand, even in these southern states, some of these southern states have changed. In this particular court, the judge was African American. The prosecutor, the leading prosecutor, the one that I saw during the closing argument, and the one who was direct examining some of the witnesses, a young African American female prosecutor. I guess she could see her father or grandfather in Mr. Herring. So there's some changes in southern states where we used to have to deal with all white juries and everybody in authority were white. White, again, law enforcement, white judge, white prosecutor, everybody white. Well, that's changing, especially in a lot of those southern states. And so now we see justice being done. So here's some of the evidence that they presented at the trial. The prosecutor presented this photo, which showed Hannah Payne's Jeep as it cut off Mr. Herring's pickup truck, a Dakota Dodge. That's what she pulled in front of him like she was the sheriff. And then she jumped out of her car and went up to his window and murdered him. Here's a photo of that. So that's her. I have the red arrow pointing to the gun that she had, the 9mm, and she's standing up to the driver's window of Mr. Herring's pickup truck. She is confronting him. She's cursing him. She's punching him. She's calling him MF. Wow. And then she shoots him. She tried to say that he shot himself. The jury didn't buy any of that. She tried to say that he was pulling her into his truck. The jury rejected all of that. The jury found her guilty of malice murder, felony murder, and those other charges. Now, there were eyewitnesses. Let me share some of them with you.
And once you saw the defendant's vehicle cornering the other vehicle, what did you, if anything, did you see her do?
I saw her at the driver's side door of the vehicle, yelling obscenities for the man to get out the car. It looks like she was trying to fight him through the window.
And what was her demeanor at this time?
Very aggressive. Very aggressive.
And what made you kind of stop at that time?
Because she was yelling, get out of the car, MF, like banging at him like this, like get out of the car. So it was a big scene.
Now, do you recall if the victim's window was up or down at that time?
I want to say his window was down. I can't recall if it was all the way down, but it was down. And she was like trying to fight him through the window.
And when you say she was trying to fight him through the window, what did you actually see?
I just saw her hands moving, get out of the car, motherfucker, doing all this. I never saw anyone's hands come out of the window, per se, but I did see her at the window.
And could you see anything that the victim was doing inside of the vehicle at that time?
I couldn't see anything he was doing inside the vehicle. I never saw his hands come out of the vehicle from where I was.
Now, after you observed her hands moving and telling the victim to get out of the vehicle, what, if anything else, did you see?
Her pull a gun. After she pulled the gun, she shot him and she said, now you need an ambulance.
Now, when you saw the Jeep jump the median and blocked the Dodge Dakota, when did the person jump out of that Jeep?
Immediately.
And when the person jumped out of that Jeep, where did they go?
Straight to his window on the driver's side.
Now, as you sit here in the courtroom today, do you see the person that was driving that Jeep?
Yes.
And can you identify that person by where they're sitting in the courtroom and what they're wearing?
The yellow, dress casual outfit right there.
All right, let the record reflect the witnesses identified the defendant in open court. Now, when the defendant jumped out of the Jeep and headed toward the Dodge Dakota, what, if anything, did you hear her say?
I heard her saying, "Get the F out the car." She just kept cussing at him. "Get the F out the car."
Now, could you tell whether Mr. Herring's window was up or down?
I don't believe that it was completely up or down, but I don't remember. I'm not gonna say.
But how close was the defendant to his window?
Very close to his window.
And can you describe the defendant's demeanor?
Aggressive.
So you heard it for yourself from two different witnesses. She was aggressive, she was hostile, she was angry, she was disrespectful, she was belligerent, all because she witnessed a fender bender and a man that she assumed was trying to get away from an accident. So she took it upon herself to try to be law enforcement and took a man's life and ruined her own life because of some depravity in her own soul. Again, it makes me think of Trayvon Martin. It makes me think of Ahmaud Arbery. It's sort of a combination of both of those killings. Murder in one case with Ahmaud Arbery. Do you remember him? He was a young Georgia kid who was shot and killed by a father and son and a third party. They were all found guilty in both state and federal court. And why did they kill him? Because he looked suspicious. He was running in their neighborhood. Well, the real reason is because he was a young black man whose life means nothing to a lot of people in this country. And by the way, it's one reason why I don't leave home without being armed. I don't. I thank God for the Second Amendment. And when I'm out, I'm strapped. I'm strapped up. Now, for all of this, she was found guilty. Let me show you what she was found guilty of, and let me show you her sentencing. So I went over those charges a moment ago. So count one, malice murder, she received life with the possibility of parole. For count two, that merged into count one and it was dismissed. Count three also merged into count one and it was dismissed. And then there is felony murder, which also merged into count one and it was dismissed. Then count five, false imprisonment. She received 8 years, which she must serve consecutive. And count six, possession while committing a felony. She received 5 years for that. Those are the two felonies that brought about the felony murder. And for counts 7 and 8, since she was found guilty and sentenced on count 6, counts 7 and 8 merged into count 6 and they were dismissed. So the result of this sentencing is she will do life with the possibility of parole. I don't know the parole law in Georgia where this occurred, but at some point she will be eligible for parole. Don't know if she'll get it, but she'll be eligible. But after she serves that life sentence, then she has to begin the 8-year sentence. And after she serves the 8-year sentence, then she has to serve the 5-year sentence. The judge ordered that she serve her sentences consecutively. If a judge says consecutively, we here in Texas call it being stacked. The judge stacked the sentences. And you do one, then you do the other, then you do the next one. If it was concurrent, then she would do all of them at the same time. But the judge, I presume, because of the aggravating circumstances, the way she not only took his life with malice, but all of the other stuff that she was doing and just the depravity that she showed and the lack of respect that she obviously had for Mr. Herring, the judge ordered that she do all of her sentences consecutively. It's a really sad story. I really relate to this story because I'm almost 62 years old. And I can only imagine what that would have been like if I am having a medical emergency at my age, and because of that, I dent someone's car. And I'm not thinking straight. I'm thinking I'm feeling woozy and so on. And so I'm trying to get to the hospital. I'm not, it's a fender bender, so I'm not trying to escape this. But if I don't get somewhere, I may just, fall out and die or something. She didn't assume that that was going on with him. She assumed that he was just trying to escape an accident. But again, a fender bender. And so I put myself in those shoes. And then as I'm trying to get some help, someone pulls their vehicle. Actually, that happened to me already. I had a man to do that. My wife and I were together. This has been probably 25, 30 years ago. We're just minding our business, driving, and this white dude pulled his truck in front of us. But it just so happened I was strapped. 45. Kimber. Okay? And I was able to show him, you step wrong, it's not going to be good. So you need to get back. And I mean, he got out of his truck just like she did him. But when he approached my vehicle, he saw what was waiting for him. Again, that's why I don't leave the house without being strapped. I don't, Mr. Herring, I don't believe he had a gun on him. They tried to argue that he had a knife, but so what? So what if he did? So what if he'd had a gun and shot her? It would have been straight self-defense because she had no right, and she argued self-defense. But you can't do all the stuff she did and then shoot somebody and claim that you were defending yourself. No, you were the aggressor. And that's why those witnesses kept saying she was aggressive. She was the aggressor. The state wanted the jury to hear that over and over and over again. so that she could not claim that this was a self-defense situation. She couldn't say, I feared for my life, so I shot him. Especially when you corner somebody, jump out with your gun, cussing and screaming and punching and standing at somebody's car window and doing all this, and then you end up shooting him and then say you are acting in self-defense. Really? Again, she tried it, but the jury rejected it. And they got it right. They got it right. There are no winners in a case like this. I've represented many people charged with murder and so on and so on. I've never been a prosecutor. I've been a criminal defense lawyer ever since I started practicing. I get no joy in seeing what happened here for all concerned parties. I get no joy with this young woman taking Mr. Herron's life and ruining her own life in the same breath. I get no joy out of that. None. I'm sad that his life was taken, and I'm sad that her life was ruined. No winners in this type of situation at all. We got to start getting along. We got to start seeing people as people. We got to start having compassion and some humanity for one another. This stuff just happens too often, too much. So I wanted to share this story with you because it's not getting a lot of attention. You know, Ahmaud Arbery's story was all over television, social media, and main media. Trayvon Martin, obviously, and many others. I could go through all the many shootings like this that have occurred. Breonna Taylor and so on. I mean, there's so many. But this one is not getting the attention that it ought to get. Let's change that, because this story needs to be told. Folks need to see that if you indiscriminately, viciously, maliciously take a black person's life, whether you are white or black, this could be the outcome. Ruin your life, tremendously burden your family's life, and destroy another family's life and take somebody's life. So help me get this story out. Thank you for listening. Again, I'm Augustus Corbett. I'm an attorney here in Dallas, one half of the Defiant Lawyers, and we bring you this content every week, 2-3 times a week, to empower you to defy an unjust legal system and to nullify systemic racism. Thank you for watching. Peace.